I'm going to start at the beginning, which is how did this whole thing get started? And you've just heard about what 350 actually means, but who am I? I'm only 31 years old. How did this whole effort get started? And part of what's so good about being here with all of you is that it started on a college campus, a university campus just like this. And we were learning the science. We were learning about what was happening with climate change, and we started to form a group. And slowly but surely, that group was getting our campus to change its practices, to be more sustainable as a campus. And we were starting to have some real victories. And it was that process of working as students that led to now our organization, which encompasses 100 people around the world. But much more than that, it's a global network of activists and volunteers. So that's the short version, but I want to tell the slightly surprising part. Is there anyone here who's still kind of wondering, is climate change as important as all these other things that I care about? Because that was me when I was a student. When I was a student at university, I was concerned about lots and lots of things, but not necessarily environmental issues. I wanted to study global development. I wanted to study global health issues, global poverty, injustice. That was what inspired me. Actually, when I was my first year at university, the US, where I am from, bombed Iraq, and I was expecting there to be some kind of major student uprising, because I had read in history books that students protest. That is what students do. And at my university, this was not happening. And I thought, oh, I must be at the wrong university. And I almost left my university, but I'm glad I did not, because it was climate change that turned that around. It was students on my campus saw climate change as a way that actually connects all these other things we cared about. And I was convinced too. Because when we think about what climate change does to our world, it's in many ways the greatest inequality that's ever existed. Here you have the rich getting richer, burning coal, oil, gas, these companies growing in size and profitability. And climate change is affecting the people who are already the most vulnerable populations in the world and making it harder for them to live. And so this gap is just widening in our world. And if we think about, well, what can we do to turn inequality around? Actually tackling climate change is this enormous avenue to try and create a more equal, a more just, and more fair world. So that's what got me involved. That's what got me excited. And thankfully, the movement is growing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about divestment in just a second. But I want to share a little bit about what we've learned just in the past year. Because if any of you are coming into this issue relatively recently, it's actually perfect timing. Because there's been a whole shift in the way climate change is now understood. For a long time, we were debating numbers, 350, 400. For a long time, people thought that actually, and I won't go too much into the science because there's a scientist here, so I'm not really qualified, but for a long time it was thought that 400 was actually the safe level of carbon in the atmosphere. So here we come along as 350. We're 26 years old. We've just graduated from university. No one is really taking us seriously. But we were debating numbers on and on and on, and we weren't getting very far. And there was a United Nations climate change conference in Copenhagen back in 2009, which we tried to influence with our number. So here we've just graduated from university. We were very passionate. We organized what CNN, our major news station in the US, referred to as the largest day of political action in history on any issue on climate change. So again, as students, we had just learned in the history books that the way social change works is you organize, you have your facts, politicians act. And so here we went to the United Nations with our protests and said, okay, let's see this climate treaty. We didn't get it. And so this shift that I'm referring to that's happened in the past year is very important, and it's actually exciting because it's starting to become understood finally that we can't burn fossil fuels anymore. That coal and oil and gas, we have to actually leave those reserves underground. And I'm very aware that saying that in South Africa, where there's enormous mineral resources, might come as a little shocking as an American. Here, what am I saying? Don't touch your coal, South Africa. And the issue here is that development and climate safety have to go hand in hand. But we have to find a better way through clean energy. So that is the shift that's happened in the climate movement, is from thinking it was all about numbers to actually it's about the economy, it's about fossil fuels, it's about changing the way our economy works, and development too. So that's the exciting part. So I'm going to pause here and share a little bit about how we've tried to spread this idea around the world, and how this small group that started on a university campus now includes Komotso, Ferial, and many other people around the world. And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do here on this campus to be connected to this global movement. So I want to emphasize two things. One is that I want to thank the organizers of this event, because you've done an incredible job bringing this group together, and clearly there's a lot of energy on this campus. And it reminds me actually a lot of my campus, where campus sustainability, becoming a green campus, is really important. But what more can you guys do to really make Stellenbosch University a leader? So I think you actually have a lot of people in the room who can help guide that, and I hope you'll continue to work with Komotso after this. So that's number one. The second is to dive deep a bit into divestment. So as I was saying before about how climate change has changed as an issue, from one about numbers to one about the economy, fossil fuels, the idea of divestment is a pretty simple one. It's this idea that if it's wrong to cause climate change, which we agree that it is, it's wrong to make money off of causing climate change, which sounds pretty basic, but it really was not understood until quite recently, actually. And divestment is intended to try and show that to say, here are these companies that are burning coal, oil, and gas. It's causing climate change, it's making us sick, it's polluting our air and our water. And that money, our universities are actually invested in these products that are making it hard for us to even have a future. So what sense does that make as institutions of higher learning, who are fundamentally about preparing all of you for the future, but the money that's helping you go to your classes is invested in fossil fuels? So that's the idea, is how do you expose that? And on the other hand, politically, how do you actually start to question the morality of investing in fossil fuels? And the whole idea for this actually came from studying South Africa and studying the anti-apartheid divestment campaign, which was a very smart way of making a moral issue, and to say, well, if it's wrong, if this government's actions are wrong, I don't want my money, my retirement savings, to be invested in something that's wrong. So one of the reasons it's great to be here is actually this is the place we studied to think about the divestment campaign. So that's what it's about. And it's really surprised us how much it's taken off, because just when we were starting 350, again, a few students, not really taken seriously, no one thought that we would succeed. And years later, with divestment, when we started to say, well, what if universities started to divest? What if churches and pension funds started to divest? Everyone said, this is not going to work. Another crazy idea from 350. But we've even been surprised. As you heard already, $50 billion of assets under management are now fossil free within 1 year. That was 1 year's worth of activity. You have HSBC, one of the largest banks, telling its clients to not invest in fossil fuels anymore. You have major asset managers like Morgan Stanley, which is based in the States, telling its investor clients fossil fuel divestment is the #1 trend to pay attention to across the entire economy. So there's all these examples from exactly what we're trying to expose that it's starting to work. And in some ways, even better than that, it's just building tons of momentum in this movement. Because I'll close with this point. it's already too late to stop climate change. We know this. That's what the 350 number means. We're too far. We're at 400. We've already done too much, and climate change is here to stay. It's a problem that our generation has inherited. It will be with us our whole lives. I get choked up when I say that. And since we know that we have to actually build a movement that can confront this problem, because we don't have a lot of time. And the other side, these companies, will always have more money than us. We're never going to have more money than Sasol or Shell, but we do have more people, and we have our creativity and our energy and our spirit and all our ideas. And so what this is about is building momentum. So we've seen, I counted last night, just off the top of my head, almost 1,000 divestment campaigns around the world, from churches to schools. They're everywhere. And so we're building this movement. It can be bigger. If we're big enough, we can actually tip that balance on our side and start to really address what is, as the professor very eloquently put it, a problem that's just a huge global wake-up call. So I hope you guys will join in. I look forward to having a discussion with you, and we've been traveling to a lot of places, and we were just whispering to each other, seems like there's a lot happening here at Stellenbosch. So I'm confident that next time we're back, there will be something exciting to report. So thank you.
Thank you so much, May. Now it's your opportunity to ask questions, so please ask away.